When I originally wrote this, it turned out to be like 20 pages. I had a lot to say. There's a link in the description if you want to check out the full blog post on this, but I'll basically give you the TLDR. Okay, so what is a post-mortem? Basically, it's the time at the end of a development project when the team can get together and reflect on the good things and the bad things, and ideally avoid the bad things while continuing to do the good things. It's essentially the game development version of a reflection.
Ah, yes. Friendly fire. Load up into a pre-made or custom game with your friend or enemy, and get ready to engage in the most intensive gunfights of your entire FPS career.
So, if you haven't heard or played the game before, it's a 1v1 FPS that features parkour. You create your own server with one of the predefined game modes or modify them to make your own. You play as one of the two characters and set up your own loadouts for those characters. Then it becomes an intensive and fast-paced game of Sam vs. Vince. But aside from a few feelings, no one's really hurt. After all, it's just friendly fire. Friendly Fire was never supposed to be released, and was never considered to be either. It was supposed to be a pretty short summer project, with me and a programming friend from college, with the only goal really having it to be like a LAN style game we can play against classmates in school. I mean, we're already playing games anyway, so. As the summer went on, schedules, complications, and just life in general happened with both of us, and the project was kind of pushed to the side, worked on for a bit, and then pushed to the side again constantly. To the point, it was just mostly me working with limited time to build it. There was no documents or plan for this project that existed outside of my head and the few Discord conversations. Because the project was never anticipated to be longer than expected, and with Pun, which ironically isn't a joke, Photon Unity networking and Unity, I figured it really wouldn't be that difficult to put this project together, but never really gave consideration to the time or the end goal, really. My goal was just to make something playable and fun. After 3 years of on and off development, the code became very unmanageable, and I learned so much in that time that it became next to impossible to actually make any changes to the project without essentially breaking everything or something getting corrupt, because something always gets corrupt. It got to the point that we were left with basically two options. Either one, I nuke it and do the project over again from scratch for the fourth time, or two, just release it and move on. Seeing as the game's already on Steam, you might assume that we already released it, and you'd be correct. You really are only as strong as your weakest link. Not that link. And it turns out, when you try to make an FPS game with multiplayer, or really any game with multiplayer, it's really, really difficult. If it's not a network problem, it's a practical code problem, and if it's not that, then it's a design problem, and if it's not that, then it's probably something related to art, and if it's not that, well, then honestly it could be anything else. And the testing was fun too. Fix something, make a build, everything works fine, you do an update, make another build, and the first thing is broken now, and also decides to break two other things, just for fun. Maybe it should have been scrapped. But I just didn't want to scrap 3 years of effort from not only me, but my friends and the other volunteers who did try to put in some work in this project, and many others who really wanted to see this project complete, and showed more than just I'm just being polite type of interest in the project, streamers included. Because so many people put so much time and resources into this project, albeit maybe not the greatest work ever, on a budget of exactly $0, it was something. And just the number of people who had interest in the project and wanted to see it complete, then after 3 years to be like, yep, nope, sorry guys, the project's actually not gonna happen anymore. You can add your 2 assets to your portfolio, but yeah, there will be no game to show for it. Like, how's the project going? Yeah, that's not happening anymore. It didn't like that, so just kind of didn't with it. That's kind of harsh to put on everybody. I was also surprised talking with some of the team members after, at how many projects they've worked on and how much work they put in, and how many of them never got completed or released. Most of their best work will never really be seen, and for some, this was one of the few projects that actually at least got to see a release date, so I guess that's something. The game kinda sucks because the team working on it was practically non-existent most of the time. We never really had dedicated artists aside from our weapon artist, who actually joined pretty late in the project, and it felt like many people basically joined and left the same week. They would do some stuff and then they would kind of half finish other things, and then they just either straight up just leave with no reason given, or they just go MIA with like no communication for weeks or months, and then come back and be like, oh yeah, sorry, you had some whatever going on, like, okay, I guess fair enough, and then they just go MIA again. Really, it was a compound of a lot of things. The management was bad, and this was a zero budget project, so no one really got paid. It's also a free game. And for many of the team, it was also their first project, with no real plan or idea where it was going or what the end goal was, if there even was one. But honestly, some things in this world cannot be answered. Where do we come from? What's the meaning of life? And how is Friendly Fire a playable game? Some things you may never know. The release and reviews was far from what I expected, not that I had much expectations to begin with. The process itself was quite annoying to deal with, dealing with the banks and Steam itself and NDAs and contracts, and yeah. But once all that boring, complicated legal stuff was out the way, after I hit that publish this game to the world button, my expectations immediately went from hope for the best, expect the worst, to you can't be surprised if you already expect disaster. And the same week, unrelated to the release of this game, I heard a streamer say probably the best quote I've ever heard, and that is, expectations are disappointments in the making. And that's basically where my mindset was at, honestly. First, I was surprised that people, including Steam's review team, didn't really understand how to even play the game at all. But, I mean, also it's probably not the most conventional way of setting up a room anyways. But then it made sense to me, because our game tester also really struggled to use a parkour system, at least the very early versions of it, when I pretty much found it wow, I can't English apparently. When I found it pretty much effortlessly easy. And I realized it's because I spent so much time around these systems, clicking the same buttons, performing the same actions to constantly test, tweak, and then test again. It basically made it second nature to me, and everyone else just had a few seconds of exposure to these systems when I had pretty much a few weeks of exposure to them. So it would make sense that it'd be very easy for me to use them, and really hard for everyone else to. But that also means the design is probably really, really bad. I was also surprised by the feedback, because most conversations with people were either very positive, and I think more so just the fact that we actually completed something and had something released, which is a big achievement on its own, more than the game itself was actually good, or positive with constructive feedback, which honestly was quite helpful, even if we kind of already knew most of the things they mentioned, but there were also some new things that they talked about that we didn't catch. Then the reviews on Steam. That was an interesting one. Even though the game is only offered in English and the main server is NA, North American, and I mean, yeah, there's I guess technically an EU server, but it really doesn't get used that often. Most of the reviews were not in English, but honestly that shouldn't surprise me. I mean, it is Steam. And the few that were either just uncreative or generally good feedback, but with a negative tone. And again, I kind of already knew pretty much everything they were mentioning anyways. It was pretty obvious things during the development of the project. They all basically boil down to the game sucks, the graphics sucks, and there's no one to play with, and you have to make your own fun, but the parkour is cool. Which, yeah, that's kind of the point of the game, and why the words "play with a friend" is mentioned pretty much everywhere, and including the trailer, Steam page, promo content, but I can see how that can easily be overlooked. The whole point of the game is for you to play it with a friend and just kind of have a laugh and enjoy the stupidly broken mess that is Friendly Fire, which is why all the comedy in the game, including the game itself, is basically a parody and essentially just making fun of the fact that it is stupid and silly. That's literally the whole point. Though, all things considered, the fact that some people took the time to download this game, play it, and leave a review just means that something about the game, whether the trailer or the Steam page itself, some of the promo content, or the game design, something caught your interest. And that's good. In hindsight, if I knew then what I know now, famous last words, if I knew it would have turned from a summer project into an actual project with an actual plan to be released from the beginning and required a team to build, then I would have probably looked for the team first. Built a GDD, which is a game design document, figured out exactly what I wanted the game to be in the end, built a prototype with at least some existence of code management, and then turned that into an actual game. Though, to be fair, on a development budget of exactly $0, it actually turned out pretty okay. I learned a lot of what not to do, and probably relied too much on others. In the end, I ended up basically having to create all the maps, and the game tester ended up making all of the first-person animations and some of the third-person animations. For whatever reason, Unity just absolutely refused to play animations correctly as well, so that was fun. And the basic ones like running and jumping we got from Mixamo, and since neither of us have like any artistic ability whatsoever, you can probably tell where the divide was in quality. If I started assuming I probably have to do pretty much everything anyways, and started on things earlier as a result of that, it probably would have actually just turned out the exact same, honestly, but at least wouldn't have taken as long. Even if the game doesn't look amazing and is sometimes broken, it's still fun to play, and really that's the most important thing to me. Interestingly enough, I did create a post-mortem form for the SMG team to fill out, and almost all of them actually thought the project was pretty okay for what it was, and the management and general organization on the project was fine as well, which really surprised me. But I always feel like there's always room for improvement to be done, and when you stop thinking that, you stop learning. So the outcome of what the team thought versus the Steam reviews versus what I personally think versus many others who were non-biased people who weren't really there for the majority of the development of the project versus what my friends thought, all seem to have very different opinions about the game. Though I guess it makes sense because the majority of them aren't all the target audience that the game was intended for. So there are gonna be things that they like or dislike from different aspects of the game. And the reviews, that honestly doesn't concern me too much. The experience on this project has basically taught me a lot on what not to do, so much so that I've been working on a Google Drive package or kit or whatever you want to call it. Basically, a bunch of documents, guides, and templates resurrected from the useful parts of quite literally the hundreds of documents we created while working on this project, and then some. Hopefully, I'll have that done somewhat soon. I'll be posting on Twitter when that comes out, and it'll be completely free to anyone who wants to use it. I also mentioned GDD before, which is a game design document. It's basically how a team plans out literally everything about their game. Every sound, character, model, game feature, map design, animations, everything. But as you can imagine, they are very long and very specific. So I made a PMD instead, which is a project management document. Very similar, but a lot easier to kind of put together and review with your team. And it still covers all of the important features of a GDD as well, with the added benefit of also emphasizing areas like determining how feasible the game is, how many people you need, who you need specifically, and as a result of all of that, how long the project might realistically take to complete. That version is currently free and will be in the description, including a full version of this reflection, I guess, as a blog. So that'll be a thing as well if you enjoy reading. It's kind of long, like really long, like 30 pages long. Anyway, yeah, join the Discord, play Friendly Fire or don't, and yeah, have a nice day. Peace.